this is the first part of how to play Dominion. Um, I don't really remember what I went over in the second part. I believe I went over like the actual phases of your turn. So this is just going to be kind of a display on the cards. Now, Dominion, first of all, is a deck building game where at the goal of the game is at the end you want to have the most amount of victory points, and you do that by adding victory cards to your deck. Um, we'll start off with the simplest one. This is an estate. You start off with three of these in your deck. They don't really do anything during your turn, but at the end of the game, you tally up the amount of victory points that you and your opponent have, and the person with the most amount of victory points wins. And estates are worth one victory point. So each of these little guys is worth one victory point in your deck. You can see that in your starting deck, you have three estates and you have seven coppers. These three estates are reflected in your victory point or VP total. So I've got three victory points right now. Lord Rattington's got three victory points right now. Every player is going to start with three victory points from their three starting estates and their seven starting coppers, which offer no victory points. Um, in other expansions like Prosperity and Nocturne um, and Dark Ages, this might not be your starting set. Prosperity will be, but with Dark Ages and Nocturnes, there are certain things that can replace either your starting coppers or your starting estates. Um, but for the base set, the one we're going to be looking at today, um, you're going to have three estates and seven coppers. These estates will give you victory points, but they won't do anything during your turns. Coppers are your base, your starting money, basically. Um, Coppers are a treasure card, and they're worth one coin, as you can see this big one coin in the center. Um, as you progress through the game, you'll eventually get more higher spending, higher value treasures, I should say. Silver is worth two, and a gold is worth three. Um, but you're just going to start off with seven coppers. Now, for the actual cards, let's take a look at. Um, we'll take a look at what should we start with? We'll start with Smithy. Smithy is a very simple action card. You can see the typing at the bottom, it's action, and you can see for our starting cards, our estates are victory cards, and our coppers are treasure cards. Um, a, every Dominion card will have a typing at the bottom. In this case, it's action. It will have the name of the card at the top here, Smithy, and it will have down in the bottom left-hand corner a cost. This is how much it is going to cost you to add this Smithy card to your deck. Now, adding this Smithy card will mean that when you draw it eventually, you can play it for three cards. You're drawing three cards from your deck. Now, every card out here has their little cost in the bottom left as a preview. Um, it will also have the amount of cards in that pile. So there's 10 of each of these kingdom cards. There's 30 gold, 40 silver, 46 copper, 10 curses, 8 estates, 8 duchies, and 8 provinces. So that number in the top left shows you how many cards are in the stack, and the number in the bottom left shows you their cost. Now that we've covered what exactly the card looks like, let's go over a couple of different types of cards. Like I said, victory cards will give you victory points. Usually you don't want to buy too many estates because they're low value, even though they are low cost, but they're not really going to give you all that much benefit. They're just going to kind of clog up your deck, and they're just going to sit there and not do anything. Usually you want to aim for provinces. Provinces, excuse me, are going to be the highest amount of victory points that you can get from one card in the base set. Again, expansions down the line will some of them will have higher victory point totals. But for this base set that we're looking at, we're just looking at the provinces, duchies, and estates, and this one has the highest victory point total at 6. It also costs 8, so it's quite a bit of coinage to buy it. As you can see, we only have 7 coppers in our starting deck, so even if we were able to get all 7 of these coppers into play, we wouldn't be able to even buy a province yet. Duchies are worth 5 coin, and they're valued at 3 victory points per duchy. So if you have 5 duchies in your deck and no other victory cards, you'll have a total of 15 victory points, and that will be shown by your tracker here. If you're playing the game in real life outside of the computer version, you won't have a victory point counter, obviously. So, excuse me. So you kind of have to guess at how many victory points you have versus your opponent, and end the game when you have more than them. We're going to go over the phases briefly here. In one of my other videos, I covered them in more detail. Actually, let's continue with the cards real quick. We talked about victory cards. Treasure cards are your currency, so you want to add silvers and golds later on in the game to get more spending power. So if you had 1 gold in play and only 1 gold, you could buy a merchant because it costs 3. Early on, you're going to be buying low-cost cards like Cellar, Moat, Merchant Village, Militia, Moneylender, Remodel, Smithy. And then later on, once you get more currency from your golds and your silvers, and possibly even some action cards, you'll be able to get the higher cost cards like Market, Mine, Gold, and Province. Certain action cards will also provide currency. As you can see, this Militia, when you play it, will give you +2 coin. It'll give you some more stuff, but we'll talk about that later once we get to action cards. And the second, well, there's 3 more cards card types that we want to cover. First is a curse. All right, curses you don't really usually want to buy. There will be some expansions where buying a curse will be beneficial. A large portion of the time, they won't be beneficial at all because it's -1 victory point. So for every curse you buy, you lose a victory point. It also doesn't do anything, much like the victory cards. So you can't use it for buying other cards. You can't use it during your action phase. You can't really use them all that well. Next is action cards. Now these 9, all of the cards in here except for Moat. Well, actually Moat is an action card too, but it has a dual typing. So these 9 cards, Merchant, Village, Militia, Mine, Market, Smithy, Remodel, Moneylender, and Cellar, are all action cards. They say that at the bottom. These are the cards that you play during your action phase. If they say that they give additional actions, like Cellar or Market, both say +1 action, that means you can play another action card immediately after that one, if you have it in your hand. Village will even give you 2 actions. So if you play a Village and then you would be able to, if you play a Village, you would be able to draw a card first from your deck, and then you would be able to play 2 actions. Some cards don't give additional actions. Smithy doesn't give an additional action. These are called terminal actions because they end. Usually, these will end your turn if you play them. If you've stockpiled enough actions, though, let's say that you have a Village and a Smithy in your hand to start, you play your Village, you draw a card, you get 2 actions, then you play a Smithy, and you can draw 3 cards, and you'll still have an additional action left over from Village that you can use to play any action cards you might have drawn with Smithy. Some cards also give additional buys. You can only buy 1 card per turn, unless you have a card in play that gives you an additional buy, like Market. So Market, you would draw a card from your deck, you would get an additional action to play another card. And then for your buy phase, you'd have 2 buys instead of 1. And you would have an additional 1 coin for currency. Militia is also an attack card. This is not the last type that I want to talk about. That's reaction. We'll get to that in a second. But it's also an attack card. An attack card will cause something negative to happen to your opponent. Sometimes they'll also give you benefits. For example, Militia gives you the +2 coin benefit, but it also attacks every other player, and they must discard down to 3 cards in hand. You start with 5 cards in hand. So this is an attack that will usually make the opponent discard 2 cards. That's not always the case. Sometimes they'll have more cards in hand for whatever reason. In this case, a large portion of the time, you'll be discarding down to 3 cards in hand. So you'll be discarding 2 cards, essentially. Moat is a reaction card. That's why it's blue. It will give you the general action of +2 cards. which is not bad, but it's not great either. You could buy Smithy for 2 more and get +3 cards instead. However, Moat has the additional benefit of being a reaction card, which is the stuff below the line, basically. When another player plays an attack card, you may first reveal this from your hand to be unaffected by it. So let's say my opponent, Lord Rattington, plays a militia during his action phase. He then gets 2 coins, and he says, okay, AJ887, you must discard down to 3 cards in hand, because I played a militia on you, it's an attack card, you're in trouble. I have a Moat in my hand. I reveal it, you may first reveal this from your hand, to be unaffected by it, and say, no, I don't want to discard down to 3 cards in hand. Piss off with your militia. So reaction cards will have stuff below the line that will be active in a certain way. Usually it's by attack cards. If someone plays an attack card, you can react with a reaction card and you'll get some benefit from it. It won't always be the complete immunity that Moat gives you. With that in mind, let's begin. So it's showing our starting cards, 3 estates, which again do nothing, except at the end of the game, and 7 coppers, which will give 1 currency each. When you start, you shuffle your 7 coppers and 3 estates together, and you draw 5 cards for your starting hand. The computer is going to do that for us. So we have 5 cards in our deck, 4 coppers, and 1 estate in our hand. We can already tell what these 5 are going to be because we know what we started with. We started with 7 copper and 3 estates. So the remaining 5 cards are going to be 2 estates and 3 copper. This is what's called a 4-3 split because you open with 4 currency the first time and 3 currency the second turn. There's also a 5-2 split where you would draw all of your estates in 1 turn as well as 2 coppers. And then 5 coppers on the next turn, or 5 coppers on the first turn and 2 coppers on the second turn. That would be a 5-2 split. Usually the 3-4 is more common. In this case, we got a 4-3 split, which is fine. So during your turn, you will start off with 1 action, 1 buy, and 0 coin. 1 action means that you can play an action card. 1 buy means that you can buy a card. You can get actions from other cards, like Village will give you 2 actions. So you spend an action to play Village, and Village gives you 2 additional actions so you can play 2 more cards. You can get additional buys from other cards as well, like Market. During your turn, you will have 3 phases: an action phase, a buy phase, and a cleanup phase. These can be abbreviated by ABC, action, buy, cleanup. For the first 2 turns, you're going to skip your action phase because you won't have any action cards in your deck. So we're going straight to the buy phase. It says you may buy cards, so it's saying it's your buy phase. You may start buying cards, play treasures, auto-play treasures. So by playing treasures, we click on them and move them into play. This shows our opponents how many treasures we have and how much spending power we have. There's also a button on the computer, I'm going to undo a couple steps, that will allow you to auto-play your treasures. Most of the time, you can just click the autoplay treasures. Sometimes there will be benefits to playing your treasures in a certain order. In this setup, we're not going to be having that wrinkle in our plan, so we can just play autoplay. So we have 4 currency, and we're going to buy a militia to show it off. Now, our opponent also bought a militia, so we're going to be affected by that attack when he plays it. Second turn, again, no action cards in hand, so we can't play any action cards during our action phase, so we skip right to our buy phase, the buy phase. We're playing our 3 copper, and we're buying a card. Now, the cleanup phase, I kind of skipped over this. The cleanup phase is taking all cards that are in play, any cards that are remaining in your hand, and any cards that you bought, moving them to the discard pile, and drawing 5 new cards from your deck. If at any point there are less than 5 cards or less than the amount of cards that you should be drawing, you shuffle your discard in to become a new deck. So these cards that are being discarded are not removed from your deck, they're just temporarily discarded. Eventually we'll shuffle them back in and create a new deck. So we're going to buy a Village here. And so we the computer automatically cleans up for us all the 3 coppers that were in play and the 2 estates that were in our hand, all moved to the discard pile and got shuffled in. And we drew our new hand of 5. We got 2 coppers, 2 estates, and a village. Now, here's where we get into the action phase. So we do have an action card in hand, so we can play it during our action phase. And we drew a copper and got 2 actions. If we had 2 action cards in our hand, we could then play them thanks to village. We don't. So we're going to move straight into our buy phase. And we're going to play our 3 coin and buy our first treasure of the game, which is silver. Now he's playing a militia, so he gets 2 coins, and he's saying you have to discard down to 3 cards in hand. Well, we want to keep our militia because it's going to give us some buying power, so we'll discard our estate, which does nothing, and we'll discard one of our coppers. Now it's our turn. We don't draw up to 5 to replace because of the attack. So instead, we're just going to play our militia for our attack phase. He had to discard. And we're going to play our 2 coppers. Now we're going to pick up a smithy because I want to show off the village smithy interaction, which we're not going to be able to get this turn because we didn't draw our village, but we did draw our smithy. And so we're in our action phase. Our opponent only got 1 coin. That sucks for him. Excuse me. Action phase, we're going to play our smithy. And this is what I like to call or what people like to call a dead draw. Smithy does not grant additional actions, so we're out of actions. However, we drew 2 coppers and a militia. What this means is we can't play this militia this turn, and it will get discarded during our cleanup phase this turn. We won't be able to play it. So instead, we'll just auto-play our treasures, and we'll buy a gold. Gold's worth 6 coin to buy it and add it to your deck, but it's got a buying power of 3. So even 1 gold in play could buy you a merchant, a village, a moat, a cellar. It's a pretty nice card. I like gold. So yeah, our militia got discarded during cleanup, as you can see there. Action phase, we're going to play our village, and we're going to buy another village. Okay, so they are having us discard. We're going to discard our coppers because usually the action cards are worth more than just coppers. So we're going to play 2 villages. Perfect. This is exactly what I wanted to show off. So we played our 2 villages. We have additional actions. Now we can play our smithy, and we still have actions to play our militia because we played our village first. If we had village and smithy in our hand and we played smithy first, we wouldn't have been able to play our village because it doesn't give us an additional action. Village, however, gives 2 additional actions, so we were able to play our smithy and we're able to play our militia. We're going to hit 7 here, and we're going to pick up a market. Market is a good all-around card. It gives you 1 card and 1 action. It's a cantrip, meaning that the card is just going to be immediately replaced in your hand, and it also gives us an additional buy and an additional coin. We've got 4 coins, and we're going to pick up a remodel because I want to talk about trashing real quick. He's forcing us to discard. We can just discard our estates and say, hey, we're good. And we'll pick up a merchant. So usually you would want to familiarize yourself with all the cards before you begin a match. We did that by right-clicking. If you're playing the actual card game, these will be the actual cards in the stack, so you'll be able to see the descriptions perfectly, like right off the bat. I think there's even a way to set it up so that you can see the full cards. But we just have the abbreviated, the descriptions are cut off. That's fine. So I do want to talk about trashing real quick, and we'll do that once I get my remodel, which I did just now. We'll play our militia to attack him. Here's remodel. It says to trash a card from your hand. Discarding would just mean that you put it into your discard pile, and eventually it will get shuffled back into your deck. Trashing is different. Trashing removes the card completely from your hand and moves it to the trash. So it says to trash a card from our hand. We're going to do that. We're going to trash our estate because estates don't really do much for us. So there it is in the trash. In the actual card game, you would have a trash mat where you would move it, the card to. That card is now no longer in your deck. There are certain cards, like in Dark Ages, certain action cards that will allow you to take cards from the trash. But in this setup, it's just going to be removing it permanently. Now it says gain a card. Why does it say that? Because we have to completely read remodel. It says to trash a card from your hand, which we did. But now it says to gain a card costing up to 2 more than it. This is not optional. Certain cards will say you may do something. You may trash a copper from your hand for +3 coin if you use Moneylender. Certain cards will say you may. Mine will say that you may. Um, I think those are the only two in this. Yeah. If it just gives you an instruction to do something, then it's not optional. If it says you may, then it's optional. So this is saying gain a card costing up to two more than it. Since we trashed an estate, which is worth 2, we'll pick up something that is worth up to 4. We don't really want any of these. These cards are all terminal actions. Smithy, Remodel, Moneylender, and Militia. Hold on. These cards are all terminal actions, so we don't really want to pick one up. We're going to continue our little engine here of action cards, and we'll pick up another village. Now we've got 3 coins, from 1 from market and 2 from militia, and we've got 2 more coppers to play, so we'll buy a market. We'll play our village and our smithy, and another village, and get up to 9, and we'll buy a province here. So now that we've added a province to our deck, you can see that our victory point total has gone up. We've got 8 victory points, 6 from the province that we just bought, and 2 from the 2 estates that we have. Remember, we trashed the 3rd one. Our opponent has 9 because he still has all 3 of his estates, and he bought a province just this last turn. So I'm going to do one more turn here real quickly. I want to try and hopefully draw a silver. There we go. To show off Merchant, which is a card in action, so it's a cantrip, and the first time you play a silver this turn, plus 1 coin. So this silver right here, this first silver that we play, is going to be worth 3. See how our total jumped up to 6 from 3? It was at 3 before. We're playing our silver, and because of Merchant, we're getting an additional 1. So it's basically worth a gold for this turn. And we'll play a copper. And we have 2 buys and 7 coins, so we'll pick up another smithy and another village, because we had 2 buys from market. Market gave us an additional buy. So even if I had hit 7 and I didn't have a market in play, then I couldn't do what I just did there. You would need an additional buy to pick up an additional card for your deck. Some of my other videos, some of my other VODs that I made today, will go over a full game of the base set, as well as a full game including cards from other expansions, to talk a little bit more about the different types of cards. This one I just wanted to show off the cards themselves and what they do. Wanted to go over trashing a little bit, wanted to go over what victory cards and like treasures do, what the different types of cards do. And I think I did that pretty well. I didn't show off Moat as much as I would like to, because it's a reaction card, but I think I described it pretty well. If you want to see more, go check out my other VODs, and let me know if you enjoyed it. And take a look at some of the other VODs. I mentioned at the end of the last one that if people like this and they want to learn more about Dominion, I will happily make more streams about it and show off other types of cards and other expansions, and try to get you all up to speed on kind of how to be a good Dominion player. And I'm certainly not a good Dominion player, but I can show you some tips and tricks that I've picked up. Thanks for watching.